SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to this session on Research and Publication Ethics. My name is Dr. Nirbhay Kumar Mishra. I am an assistant professor at Institute of Applied Sciences and Humanities at GLA University, Mathura. Today I will be discussing about the Research and Publication Ethics, which is one of the compulsory courses under the guideline of UGC for all the PhD students enrolled in the universities in India. So, what the scholars will learn after the session, they will come to know about the course structure, and then they will be clear about the theory and practice sessions. Further, they will understand about the scope of research and publication ethics in research and development. Further, they will come to know about the needs and objectives of the course. Then they will also recognize the value of research and publication ethics. Then they will understand introductory remarks on each section of this course. So, let us talk about the course structure of this course, Research and Publication Ethics. In this course, we have 6 modules. 3 modules are in theory section and 3 are in practice section. So, in theory section, in the unit 1, we will be studying about philosophy and ethics. In the second module, we will talk about scientific conduct, and in the third module, we will talk about publication ethics. In the practice sessions, we have another 3 units. In the first unit, we will be discussing about open access publishing. In the 5th unit, we will be discussing about publication misconduct, and in the last 6th unit, we will talk about database and research matrix. So, let us talk about the scope of research and publication ethics. As we know, research and publication ethics is very necessary for all kinds of research and development activities taking across the whole world. In the last 2-3 decades, we have acknowledged many cases of plagiarism and many unethical practices prevailing in research and development. So, to avoid these unethical practices and producing quality research and developments, we need to understand how research and publication ethics can be really important as a subject to study for all the research scholars. So, in understanding the scope of research and publication ethics, we need to understand how philosophy contributes a lot in the research and development, and it has been a source of creating the knowledge and changes in society, and in the way it leads to the research development as well. So, philosophy actually, by the logic, it helps in research developments. Further, we will be understanding the role of logic in writing the thesis and research paper writing. And then we have to understand why we need to respect ethical standards in research conduct and developments. And then we also have to acknowledge that scientific conduct is the way to develop our researches. So, scientific conduct really plays an important role in understanding how science, establishes the facts, and why scientific conduct based on the objective facts, unbiased way of conducting research becomes really important in research and publication ethics. Then we have to avoid scientific misconduct in research development, and then we will also understand how technology and softwares can actually help research scholars in maintaining academic honesty and avoiding plagiarism and producing quality researches. So, further, discussing about the needs and objectives of this course, research and publication ethics, we need to understand we have to maintain academic integrity and research honesty. It is to protect intellectual property rights and authorship of all the research scholars. And then we have to understand it is to incorporate ethics in research and developments, and then protect research scholars from fraudulent research practices and pseudo publications and publishing houses. And then in the end, we have to develop a quality research which is plagiarism free and which is underlying the academic honesty. Further, recognizing the value of research and publication ethics, we can understand research and publication, right-headed research and development with academic integrity. When we recognize the importance of philosophy, logic, and ethics in research and development, it incorporates ethics and resolve ethical issues in research. The value of the research and publication ethics can be recognized the way the open access research has been expanded across the whole world to maintain equality in terms of research resources and mitigating all the factors which are stopping research scholars to produce quality research works. Then we have to understand what are the quality publication tools and indexing and softwares for research and development. And then in the end, it is valuing that plagiarism-free research is the mark of a good, honest research, and we have to adapt to qualitative ethical standards for academic publications. Now we'll take up introductory remark on each section of this course, research and publication ethics. So we will be discussing about the first unit, which is on philosophy and ethics. So while discussing philosophy and ethics, we will be understanding what is philosophy and what is the role of philosophy, right? And how logic actually plays an important role in making us understand about the arguments, valid arguments and invalid arguments, and generalized way of writing a thesis and the correct way of writing the argument. So through the logic, we understand very well how to write an argument and how to develop a quality research paper. Philosophy actually shapes the knowledge, and in all the times we have observed that philosophers has made change in terms of understanding the researches and developments. So philosophy has an important role to the research and development practices. Further, in this section we will try to take up some great philosophers who actually change the knowledge practices in different times. We will start our discussion with Plato, who is a father of philosophy, we can say, and we'll discuss about the theory of knowledge in that section, and then we'll move to the Aristotle. Discussing Aristotle, we'll talk about the causation, which is a major factor in sciences also, because it talks about the cause and effect relations to produce certain things in this nature. Then father of modern philosophy, René Descartes, and then we'll discuss about the David Hume, who has been a great empiricist. So we'll try to compare between these two kind of knowledge practices. One is rationalism school and other is empiricist school. And then further we will move to the Immanuel Kant, and in that discussion we'll try to understand how Kant has bypassed these two different schools, rationalism and empiricism, in explaining how knowledge is possible with experience, but it requires the faculties of mind and categories of mind. And then we'll discuss about the Hegel, who talks an interesting idea that how knowledge actually evolves and actually take a shape with the idea of thesis, antithesis and synthesis. After that discussion, we'll move to the G.E. Moore, who talks about the realism, and then we'll take up these three great philosophers from Cambridge University, G.E. Moore, Bertrand Russell, and Wittgenstein. So we'll take up the quick discussion on these three philosophers, how they develop different kind of philosophies which involved logic and science, and they emphasized on the language also. So after that discussion we will talk about the branches of philosophy, and in that discussion I will be analyzing about the logic, metaphysics, and epistemology and axiology, that is a study of value. After that discussion on philosophy, we'll move to the ethics. In discussing about the ethics, first we'll try to understand what is the difference between the morality and ethics, and what is ethics as a study of right and wrong, good and bad, and what ought to be done and what ought not. And then we'll try to understand the origin of ethics in the discourse of meta-ethics, and then we'll try to understand the roots, psychological and metaphysical roots of ethics, and then we'll try to understand the descriptive ethics and the normative ethics, and we'll also talk about three prominent theories in ethics, namely virtue theory, utilitarianism, and deontology. After that discussion, we will move to understand the nature of moral judgments and what is the right thing to do in the research. We'll try to understand the research issues which involves the ideas from ethics and how ethical theories can really help in making decisions in research practices. Further, we move to the second unit, which is on scientific conduct, which is really very important in research and development, because in scientific conduct we rely on the objectivity, rationality, and unbiased way of conducting research. So here we will try to understand how ethics has a great role with respect to science and research. What kind of role ethics plays in scientific researches? What are the issues pertaining to the environment, society, even the subjects that we take for the researchers, like for example, if we are conducting research in medical science, then we have to test a drug on patients. Then we have to understand what are the ethical guidelines, what are the ethical norms that we have to follow. So ethics has a major role to play in scientific discourses, in scientific conduct. And then we'll try to understand what is intellectual honesty and research integrity. In intellectual honesty, we'll try to understand whatever the researchers we produce in terms of teaching, in terms of the reports, in terms of the any kind of scientific documents or research document that we'll produce, then what is the intellectual honesty? We need to produce that the way that the research is, where we have to avoid the plagiarism, self-plagiarism, and the other unethical practices to maintain research and research integrity. Further, we'll try to understand scientific misconducts. And scientific misconduct, of course, when you don't follow the scientific conduct, you actually commit scientific misconducts, and it includes falsification, fabrication, and plagiarism. Falsification takes place when you manipulate with the data, or you misrepresent the data, or you omit certain data and try to use data the way you want to produce your conclusions, or the way it can really helpful for your research. So after fabrication, actually what you do, you try to misrepresent the data in fabrication. You fabricate with some fact, then you have to understand there's a complete data set and incomplete data set. Where you find that data set is incomplete, you try to fill the data with some other information. That's where you commit fabrications. And of course, plagiarism has been a great problem for research development in last 4 or 5 decades. We have to understand plagiarism means when you take some research material from the other sources and you don't properly cite the source, or you just copy and paste the material and use as your own research and claim your authorship. That's commitment of the plagiarism. So we'll discuss about the plagiarism, self-plagiarism, and the levels of the plagiarism, where the 0 level, level 1, level 2, level 3, we'll talk about in that discussion. Then we'll come to the idea of redundant publications. What does it mean when we've published something we have already published as a big data, and then we try to use that big data and publish and the researchers from that, and then we commit the salami slicing, and sometimes we send 2 publications to 2 editors and they are somehow published and they are overlapping publications. These all are the unethical practices in the ethics we have to understand. And then in the end, in this unit, we'll talk about the selective reporting and misrepresentation of data, where scholars, what they do, they actually take some important data from one research and they purposefully use and avoid the other data, or they only represent what is beneficial for them, and they omit what can be not good for the research. That is called the selective reporting and the misrepresentation of data. So moving to the third unit, that is on publication ethics, we'll try to understand what are the ethical standards of publication. There we have to start with the approval and disapproval, and then we have to understand about the conflict of interest. Then we have to understand the idea of collegiality, and then we have to understand the idea of communication. Then we have to understand the idea of the other kind of ethical norms we have to fulfill, and the old committees norms we have to fulfill in order to publish a material with a quality journal. So these all things we will try to discuss in this in this unit in the publication ethics. Then we'll move to understand what are the best practices in publication, and what are the standards, and who those are the committees, like committees on publication ethics, COPE, and the World Association of Medical Editors. They have developed a great set of rules and standards to settle down the unethical practices to resolve the unethical practices in publication process. And then of course we'll try to discuss about the conflict of interest, how to avoid this conflict of interest, how to address it, and how to resolve it. And then of course we'll talk about the publication misconduct, and then we'll try to understand what are the major problems when in the publication misconduct, and we'll try to understand what is the unethical behavior in the publication process, or what caused the publication misconduct. And then we'll try to discuss about the violations of publication ethics and the rule of authorship and contributorship. And then we'll try to identify what is publication misconduct, and what are the major complaints and appeals, and where we can register a complaint, what are the resolving methods, and how we can resolve our problems in publication if we are caught with some fraudulent practices or predatory journals, right? Then how to register our complaint and how to resolve our issue. Then of course we'll talk about the predatory publishers and journals. There we'll take the help of the UGC care list, and we'll try to understand through a practice session. Then now further we have some practice sessions in this module. So we have 3 practice sessions. In unit 4 we'll talk about open access publishing, right? So open access publishing is very necessary, and it plays a key role for research and development, because it provides a huge resource in research free of cost to the scholars. And somewhere we have to understand many predatory journals are there, those who publish open access publication. So we have to understand, of course, what are the major about the open access publishing. Then we'll try to understand the conventions, Budapest conventions, Berlin conventions, and their initiative to avail the research resources to society, so that everybody can have the access of researchers, so we can have a good research development across the whole world. And then we'll talk about the SERPA and Romeo online resources to check publishers' copyright and self-archiving policies. And then we'll talk about some software tools to identify predatory publications developed by SPPU, UGC care list of journals. And then in the end, we'll try to discuss about the journal finder, how to find appropriate journal for your research, and that I will train you through a practice session. There I will be using Elsevier journal finder and Springer journal finder, how to choose a research journal, what are the different metrics which are really useful for you, like the response of time, like the impact factor, acceptable period. These are important metrics which are really important for research scholar in the time of publications. So further in the 5th unit we'll talk about the publication misconduct, and there I will be involving some discussions in the lectures where we talk about the subject specific ethical issues from the from the biotechnology, in the medical science, in the humanities. And then we'll talk about how falsification, fabrication, and plagiarism is a great problem and it causes publication misconduct. And then we'll try to understand about the authorship also. And then we'll talk about the conflicts of interest, how it takes place, and how to avoid this conflict of interest. And then again we will try to discuss about the complaints and appeals, and we'll take up the examples and fraud cases from India and abroad to to expand our understanding in this area, right? And then we'll also develop understanding to the software tools that we use for our reference management. Reference management is a really hectic job when you have more researchers to cite in your paper or your thesis, right? Then actually these softwares like Mendeley, Jotaro, and Note, they are really useful and beneficial in organizing your research references. And then we also try to understand how to check the plagiarism of your research document through the plagiarism tools like Turnitin and Erkon. And then in the last unit, which is the 6th unit, that is on databases and research metrics, in that unit we'll try to understand about the indexing databases, why they are important and how they ensure the quality publications by their quality standards and norms. There we'll talk about the two important databases, namely Web of Science and Scopus. And in the end we'll try to understand about the research metrics in terms of the impact factor of journals as per journal citation reports. There we'll try to understand about the SNP, SJR, IPP, and site score. We'll develop our understanding on these impact factors ratings, and then we'll try to understand about the H index, G index, I index, and ultrametrics. So now we summarize the whole discussion on this course structure of research and publication ethics. So we understood about the course structure in detail. We realized the value of research and publication ethics in research development. We comprehended the need and objectives of the research and publication ethics for a quality research development. We developed our introductory understanding to the course structure so that we can understand the scope of research and publication ethics, and we can develop our deep understanding further in the coming lectures. And then we also acknowledge the role of philosophy, ethics, scientific conduct, and research tools and softwares in maintaining academic integrity and research honesty. So these are references that we will be using for this course. So you can go through these references to catch up with the coming lectures in this course. Thank you.